Here's everything you need to know when you first start acrylic pouring to save you some time and a lot of heartache. So the first trap people fall into when they start acrylic pouring is they don't realize that it's equal parts art and science. And what I mean by that is, because abstract art does not have form in the way that traditional drawing and painting does, mastery of your craft and understanding the materials plays a much larger role in acrylic pouring than it does in other art forms. Now, the good news is you don't need a degree in chemistry to understand things like oil and water don't mix, right? So with that being said, rule number one is you have to understand that the consistency of your recipe is everything. Consistency of the recipe plays the biggest role in how the paint behaves. Varying the consistency of a recipe can mean the difference between a successful Dutch pour and a completely messy one with no clear edges. And you should also know that even if you use the most expensive paints and pouring mediums, if your consistency is wrong, your paint will still crack. Rule number two is one I really don't see talked about enough, and it's measure everything by weight, not volume. Let me explain why. When you measure things by volume, the problem with that is it doesn't take into account the density of the materials. So when you hear 1 part water to 1 part floetrol, 100 ml or 100 ounces of water weighs a lot differently than 100 ml or 100 ounces of paint or floetrol or glue. So the only way to keep consistent is to use weight as opposed to volume, because even if the density of your materials changes, like it does between the summer and the winter, your recipes will stay more consistent if you use weight as opposed to volume. And that leads me to rule number 3. Write everything you do down. I mean, write down the recipe, write down the weight, write down the conditions, if it was humid, if it was warm, if the window was open, if you left the fan on. Every one of those is a factor. If you don't write down your recipes and your process, you will never know which variable caused the problem. I spent months thinking that PVA glue just didn't work for me because there were infinitely more factors that could have ruined it than the PVA glue didn't work. There are infinitely more reasons for the painting getting ruined or cracking as it dries that are beyond the materials are bad. Most materials actually work, so long as they're water-based, most materials actually work, but there are factors like climate, like if there's a draft, if there's humidity, if the drying is uneven, all of these will cause paint to crack. And most importantly, incorrect consistencies in incorrect techniques will almost always cause problems. And you will never know which of these is the problem if you don't write everything down. Rule number 4. Cells are cool, but using silicone oil is a giant pain in the ass. By now, you should probably know that everything you use in acrylic pouring is water-based. The acrylic paint itself is water-soluble, but after it sets, it becomes sort of like a plastic. Now, it's important to understand that if you're going to use a cell additive that's oil-based, you now have a component that doesn't fully dry and also doesn't fully mix with the water-based components. And what that means is if you use silicone oil, after your painting dries, if you want to add any other layers on top of it, you have to wash the silicone oil off. You can do this using alcohol rub, but be mindful that could sometimes disintegrate your paint as well. Most people prefer Dawn dish soap. I use dish soap myself with a damp towel, and that works out fine. And that's it. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them for me in the comment section. This is G, and I'll see you guys soon.